Hey, in this video, we're going to be going over the inventory system that I've created. It is made entirely in Blueprints, and it's going to be utilizing data assets. Now, I know there's not a lot of videos out there on data assets and how you can utilize them. So this does kind of dive deep into how we can go about using data assets in a way that's efficient and also doesn't cause you as much problems down the road. Now, it can get a bit complex. I did spend a pretty long time trying to sort this out to make these functions and just the structure of it as easy as I possibly could think of. So it did take me quite some time to build this out, but I did try to simplify it as much as I possibly can. If you have like suggestions or comments about how to make it even easier, like feel free to drop a comment or anything throughout the video. I'd be happy to take a look and make iterations upon it. But at this time, it should be relatively easy-ish to get built out. Now, that being said, this video does take the assumption that you kind of understand the basics of how to build blueprints and events functions and manipulating data within Unreal Engine. So it can get a bit complex in that manner, but as long as you can follow along or just slow it down, go back in bits and pieces. I did break this video up into pieces to kind of hope to make that a bit easier so you can come back at a later time, or if something specifically doesn't work, you'd be able to address that. So that being said, I do try to explain as much of what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So this video will run a bit longer as usually my videos do, but I do try to give you as much context as possible, as well as other possibilities that you can do. Now, there are routes that I take that I've personally found better, but I will try to explain and show like a rough example of what you could do. Because I do know that there's a lot of directions you could go with the inventory system, and it's really hard to make it as as robust as possible because things can change. It's really hard to make something universal for everyone. So at least in that manner, I try to make sure to communicate with you on how to at least manipulate it or adjust things to make it easier, or if you have an idea how you can go about implementing that. So that being said, let's get into it. In this project, we're going to be starting with a pretty clean slate. I essentially have barely anything in here other than like the Unreal Engine standard stuff that they give you. I just kind of recategorized for myself. And then I emptied out this playground so that it's just the character. I have a couple of assets that I am using. So I got the font that I'm using, which you could just Google it and find it. And then I have these assets that we're going to be using for the UI. This is going to be available for free within my GitHub, so you could always go there and get all of these if you so choose. So that is the only things that we have. We have the player character and just standard input bullshit stuff that's just there. So let's start off with creating our data related stuff. We're going to start with a data table. This is going to be the item types that we are going to support. And by doing so, we're going to label these through using gameplay tags. They are very easy to use, and Unreal Engine uses them for a lot of things. So it is good practice to kind of at least get to know them and know how you can use them, because things like the gameplay ability system also use gameplay tags. So it's just good to know that they exist and to use them. So let's go ahead and create a data table so we can list the type of items that we're going to have. Now, for me, it is the second item, which is the gameplay tag table row. You can also just search for gameplay, and it should be the first one that appears. We're going to hit OK. I'm going to do DT for data table, and we'll just call this item list. This is going to be the list of type of items that we have. We're going to open this up. Let's go ahead and expand these. I'm going to have 9 type of items, so I'm going to go ahead and do 9 rows. So with this is going to be the high level type of items that you have. So things like a helmet, armor, pants, gloves, whatever type of items that you want. If you want to have like a main hand, or you really want to like identify with like ranged weapon versus melee weapon, things like that, try to go as high level as you can, because that's what this is for. So for me, I'm going to be using helmet, armor, pants, and I'm doing glove. Technically, we're going to have 2 gloves, but you don't want to do duplications here, because we're going to handle that within the game logic. That makes it really easy down the road for if you want to do like a Diablo type thing, where if you want somebody to have like 2 main hand weapons instead of having an offhand, it'll be really easy to modify that later down the road. You're not going to see that right now, but when we get to that, I'll kind of re-mention it. But for this, don't do like duplications. Don't do like left arm, right arm, things like that. I mean, technically you could do that if that's what you want to do. Follow your heart's content. But for the sake of my video and how I built it, I like to keep a separation just so it's easily customizable down the road. So we have offhand and main hand. We're going to do ring, boots, and potion. Now, for me, I kind of put them in the order of which I'm going to use them within like slots as well as the UI. I kind of established an order that I specifically want. You can organize it however you want, do whatever you want. That is just the way that I'm going about doing it. Next, you're going to need to set the tags for all of them. So the tags are pretty simple, where you just have to label the category for what they are. So in this case, this is going to be an item. You do a period. That kind of creates the item category. And then we kind of go another layer down. And then I'm going to do helmet. What you can do if you want to end up creating like a separation for helmets. So like if you had different classes, like let's say you have a helmet that drops, but it could also be for like a wizard. So you want to make sure only wizards can grab this. So it's going to be a helmet, but it's also going to have the tag wizard. You can also do something of having like a secondary tag. So like items could have 2 tags if you want to do that. It really, however organization you want to do. You could even go like wizards have their own items. So it's like item wizard, helmet, whatever you have in mind. In my case, I'm not going that complex. So we're just going to do helmet. And then we'll do item armor. And that is essentially the trend for all of these. You start with item, do the period, and then do the name of the tag. I'm going to do the rest of these and get right back to this. Now that all the tags are set, what we want to do is go into our project settings. But before I do that, I want to create another category or a new folder for our data related stuff. This is going to be for our data assets and data table. We're going to then go into project settings, search for gameplay, hit the plus button here on the gameplay tag table list, and then you should see your data table here. As long as you did the gameplay tag table row, it will appear here. If not, create a brand new one by selecting create new asset. Now that we have selected that there, when we go to manage gameplay tags, we should now see here all of the categories you set would be listed. Let's go ahead and close all of this. Next step is creating our data asset. So in our data table, we're going to go to blueprint class and search for primary data asset. And it should be right here. We're going to call this DA item. Item. Pretty simple naming. This is going to store all of our items information, as well as some helper functions down the road, so that our inventory component doesn't have to do all of it, as well as not have like every single piece of logic. Kind of helps reduce that and making organization a bit better. So let's go ahead and add the variables that we're going to be using. We're going to be using 6 variables, so I'm just going to do 6 first. That's 5. First thing we're going to have is going to be the origin. Now, the origin is going to be a data asset as well. So it's going to be a DA item. The reason why we are doing this is because data assets, if you take the original data asset and manipulate it, it will take those changes and save it to the original data asset, and it will stay like that for forever. So if you end the game and reopen, it's going to be exactly the same. So you cannot manipulate the original data asset. I mean, technically you can if that's your purpose, but for the sake of like an RPG, if you're creating like a weapon and you want to set the damage for the weapon, you don't want to take the original data asset and say this one has 20. So when you create another one, it's also going to be 20. It's always going to stay that to whatever new information you put. So when we create data assets within the game, we'll be creating a new one, and we need to have reference to what that original one was. Now, if you didn't understand that explanation, we'll get into it later when we go into creating items. But at this time, we just want to make sure we have a reference to the original item so that later down the road, it saves our lives, as well as when we are creating and saving items, because data assets do not save in save game files too. So, important factor there. Next, we're going to have a name. This can be a string or a text. Text goes really well for UI. String is just very generic. So whatever you see fit. Icon is going to be a texture 2D. Since it's the data asset, I don't mind using a object reference instead of like a soft object reference. I find that perfectly fine since data assets are going to be there anyways. So next one, we did icon. It's going to be the item type. So this is going to be that gameplay tag, gameplay. Make sure you select gameplay tag and not all these other ones. Otherwise, you'll end up running into some weirdness. Next is going to be the amount. So this is the amount of like stacks within an item. You can name this however you want. I'm going with the word amount. You could do stacks or quantity, whatever you want, whatever best suits your counting logic. And the last one is going to be the maxed amount. This is to let us know how many that this item can actually store. Compile. I don't know why it thought it was still a bool, but those are going to be the ones that we're going to be using. I'm going to change all of these categories to info. And let's put all of these in here. And then I'm going to reorganize this so that it is organized in the way that I like. Like so. Next, not graph. We want to create some functions that we're going to be using within our actor component when we get there. So the first function is going to be the set values. So when we create a brand new item, we're going to have to set all of the information for that brand new item. Because it's basically going to be a clean slate. We're going to create an item, but it's going to have no info whatsoever. So we're going to take all of these pieces and we're going to have to connect all of them. And the input is going to be a data asset. So it's going to be DA item, object reference. This is going to get the origin, plug that in here. as such. I am going to organize this in a clean manner. We're going to get name, plug it in. There's going to be a lot of repetition right now because unfortunately there's no better way to set all of these values like so. Icon. If this was C++, honestly, this would be like just lines of copied code where you can copy and paste. Unfortunately, Blueprints does not let you do that for all of these variable types. Item type. We just want to match all of them so that they all equal exactly the same. But remember to keep your stuff looking beautiful so that if other people take a look, as well as yourself, it looks good. And readable. Focus on the readable part. All right, and plug in max amount. So that'll set all of the values for when we end up creating a brand new data asset. Let's go ahead and label this as function. I am being very lazy in my categorizing in this video. I'm going to be labeling things between functions and pure functions. Now, pure functions are called functions still, but just know that I was lazy. This is what I'm going with. Label them however you want. Next is going to be the add amount. Whenever we add an item, we need to increase its current value. We also need to make sure that we never go past its max amount. So let's say an item can stack up to 5 times. If we are adding a new amount, we want to make sure we never get to 6. And if we do get to 6, we want to make sure to pass along, hey, this is how many it went over. Do with whatever you want with that info. So we're going to have an input that's an integer, which is going to be an add value. We're going to have another integer as the return, and this is going to be the remainder, so the amount that is left over when we do add. So if we're ever adding an amount, we want to make sure we pass along what's left over, if there is any. If not, we end up not using the value, it doesn't matter. So what we would want to do is grab the current value. We want to add it to our current amount. We're going to set this to a local variable called the new total. This gives us the new amount that we have. Next, we want to make sure that we never exceed the max amount. So we're going to be using the min node, which it will always return the smallest number between the two. So if the new total, for example, ends up equaling 4, it'll never exceed the max amount of 5. So it will always return the lowest. So if this ever gets to 6, it's always going to return 5. And then what we'll do is, now that we have the new amount, we set it here and store it. So now we could be, hey, we now have 4, store that. For the remainder, we need to go ahead and do some calculations. So let's go ahead and grab our new total, and we're going to grab our max amount. From our new total, we're going to subtract the max amount. So if this equals 6, we will subtract 5, and that means this is going to return 1, and we'd be able to pass that along. Now we could pass that along like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do max. So this is always going to return the maximum value. And this is just so that when we pass along to here, when we subtract, it's never going to go into the negatives. It's always going to be a remainder of 0 or more, which will just make it a bit easier. You don't run into any weirdness down the road. So let's throw that into the function section. we're now going to check to see if we can add to this item. So we're going to just call this can add. You could do like can add amount, whatever you want. This is going to be a pure function because we're simply checking if it's possible. We're going to grab the current amount and the max amount, and we're going to check that this is not equal and return. And let's just call this, I don't know, available. And all this does is to make sure that our current amount does not equal the max amount. So that if we want to add in a stack to this item, we could just easily call this to be like, hey, is this possible? And then we move forward with that. So that'll make our life a bit easier later. The next thing we want to do is we need to check to see if items are matching. So we're going to do origin matching. And the reason why we're creating a function for that and not simply just grabbing data assets and saying, hey, this is equal to that, is because we will be creating data assets. So anytime you create a new object, they will never equal the same because they're two objects. We're creating two items. So if two items drop, but they're technically the same item, like they have the same name, the same type, you wouldn't be able to compare the two because they would be two different objects that got created at two different times. So this is where the origin comes in handy, where we can say, hey, this actually came from this data asset. So we can go ahead and compare it that way. So we're going to go ahead and, oh, why did it do that? I don't know. We're going to do DA item. And this will be item origin. We'll grab our current origin and equal. Since the original data assets will be native to Unreal Engine, those ones won't change, and that's why the origin works and new creating ones do not. And return. Like so. And let's make sure that is a pure function. The last one we want to do is going to be converting this data asset into a structure. This is only going to be used for the saving feature. If you're not really going to do save items, then you don't have to do this part. But for those that want to save items and let player load them, that this part will be important. It's kind of the reason why I kind of separated the two so that you can take the option to use it or not. Let's create a new folder here. We'll call this struct. We're going to create a brand new struct. We'll call this f save item. Open this up. And this structure is going to have everything that you see here, all of that. So whatever variables you have, copy it. So I believe I have 6, which is origin, name, icon, item type, amount, max amount. Any information that will differentiate between what the origin has, you want to make sure that you save it. Now, the origin itself can store information, so you technically wouldn't need to load pieces of information that are like duplicate. So, for example, if the origin has the same name as the item you create, you could technically not save it if you don't want to. I find it easier this way. So just my preference. I'm going to change all of these to the variables that we have. Gameplay tag. And this is going to be an integer. Now let's go back into the data asset. We're going to create a brand new function, and this is going to be convert struct. Put in the pure, make it a pure function, and this one will return the structure that we have just created, which is f save item. This will just be a struct and do make. It should have a list of all of the functions that we just added, or not functions, variables. And you just want to plug all of these in like so. Item type, amount, max amount. And let's make this a bit prettier. Like so. Okay, there we go. Okay, now if you're not really understanding the whole concept of what origin is, that's okay. Please bear in mind, I'm gonna go into that. I know that with just hearing words versus not being able to see it is a bit confusing. Don't spend too much thought on it right now. If you don't get it, I will go into it. And you'll kind of see what I mean later down the road. Mainly when we get to the UI, because that's where it starts to really pull together. I can't really like skip ahead to that, because then otherwise it won't make sense. So just bear in mind, if you don't get it, don't get annoyed. Like, just bear with it until we get there. Okay, so now that we have created the data asset, let's go ahead and create the children of the data asset. So this is going to be the items themselves. So what I like to start with, let's go with children. I like to start with like the main items themselves. So things like the high tiers. So like we did with the tags, where you have the armor, you have the boots, you have glove, helmet, and then you can kind of go into the children from there. So let's say you have the main glove. You can then make a child and then be like, oh, well, this glove is called Jerry's glove, things like that. And you branch out from the glove. That kind of makes like a 2-layer thing, which is okay. You don't necessarily have to do that, but yeah. You can create different folders for armors like this, where it's like armor, pants, etc., things like that. I won't have enough items, so I'm not going to go into that categories, but try to keep yourself organized so that you can easily find things. So we're going to go with data asset, and then DA item, or whatever you named it. We're going to go DA armor. And then I'm going to copy this a couple times. Honestly, I may delete some, but I don't want to do the math on how many I'm doing. Okay, so from the start, we now have the origin, name, icon, item type, amount, and max amount. The origin is always going to be itself. So the armor will always want to refer to the base blueprint, which is the armor. So we created these blueprints, which are going to be used for all future items. So all of our items later down the road are going to refer to their origins, so that this is the original info, so that we can load it, we can store it, and when we create a new item, we could be like, hey, this is all the information we want to use, and then we can decide on changing the damage later, health, stats, whatever you want to modify. Go ahead and call this whatever you want. This is just going to be called armor. I'm not being too creative. I did import a couple of images that I use for basically everything. Just generated images that I have used for like all of my videos, so that they're just all basic. So for armor, I don't really have like a real armor, so we're just going to use these images as placeholders. And then we want to go ahead and set the tag, which is going to be item armor. Make sure to select the specific tag. Don't just click item, because it will just be a generic item for everything. So armor is going to be for there. And then now we need to go through and set this for all of them. So now that I have armor set, I'm going to go ahead and create boots. And we'll go ahead and search for boots as well. Name it boots. Let's give it another image. I don't really have boots, so we'll give it this one. I should have probably went in order, because I'm probably going to confuse myself with what images I used and what I did. Oh, one thing. So for the amount and max amount, by default, I'm going to stick to 1 and 1. You can change these later to what you want. So if you want to like give somebody an item, but they actually have a 0 amount, you can set to 0. This is where you set the max amount. So if I want this to stack up 5 times, you can. I will not have armor stacking, because that sounds broken. Okay, so boots. I'm going to do one more with you guys, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the rest off screen, so you don't have to watch all of it. The next one I'm going to do is going to be the potion. That's because this one is going to be stackable. So we actually want a stack of, let's say 3. Oop, that's a period. And starting amount is always going to be 1. You can also go into the data asset itself, go to amount, change this to 1. Slider value, you could also change to whatever value you want. So like value range, we could do 0 and 0. Same thing with max amount. We could say the max amount at minimum should be a minimum of 1. Value range, you can set whatever you want. So we could be like, yeah, max amount has to be at least 1. Whatever you want to do. Things like that. And that way, when we are opening them up by default, they will have 1. So let's go ahead, do boots. I know I keep saying let's go ahead, but it's my way of speaking right now, I guess. Let's call this potion. We'll grab other items. I don't think I have a potion item added here. So let's go ahead and get that added. We'll use this one. I have like a set of like 15 items or images that I use for everything, and I've done that for like since the beginning of my YouTube. So that gives that, and we need to set the tag. I don't know why it got set to false. It's probably because it was compiled and I hit compile. This is a potion. Oh, looks like I forgot to add potions to our data table. Wait. Oh, no, I just failed when I named it potion. That's why you double check your work. And this also shows that I don't overly edit everything. So sorry about that. There we go. Now it says potion. Now I'm going to do the rest off screen so that we can speed this part up. And now that I've renamed all of them, There is one last data asset that I made that's not technically an item. So I call this DA empty. This is going to be used for UI only, but I just found it to be a bit easier for when I was like making UI. So essentially, this will have no info whatsoever. So the main reason is to set this icon to whatever default icon that you want. So I have this blank transparent image. It's quite literally just transparent. There's other ways that you can structure it. This is just what I went with because it was very simple to add and required less logic for me to do. And I mean, it doesn't require much to do this, but handle it however you want when we get there. So that creates all of our data assets. So now we have the structures, data assets, and data tables. And that would conclude this part. And let's go to the next. We'll be creating the actor component. And we're going to start with the variables and create the pure functions that we're going to use throughout the other functions to kind of make our lives easier. I did separate these two parts from all of the like main functions so that we could get that built out, and it kind of separates them to make it a bit easier for all of you as well as for me as well. So we're going to create our actor component. AC inventory. We're not going to ever use event tick here, so don't worry about that. And we're going to create our variables first, and we're going to have 4. First one is going to be our bag. This is going to be all of our items, so DA item. Everything is going to be within a single array. This makes it a lot easier for storing info and manipulating information within our functions, so we don't have to worry about multiple arrays. You technically can separate the two between what is your bag versus what is your equipment, like what you have your player is currently using. So you can call that whatever you want. I'm calling it gear, but for that sake, we're gonna keep them all within one because I found that to just be a lot easier. So we're gonna do max items. We're going to do max slots. And this is going to be an integer. It's going to be the max amount. Why is it saying false? Sir, there's nothing there. So this is going to be the max amount of items that we can hold. This is not going to include our equipment. This is just going to be for like a bag, like how much a player can carry that he's not currently wearing. You can do whatever you want. I'll just say like 40 right now. Change that later down the road. Next is going to be our gear slots. This is going to be our equipment. Reference to our equipment on how we can go about using them. So we're going to do gameplay tag as an array. And this is how you can organize whether somebody can have 2 weapons, if they can have like 2 gloves, etc. So for me, I'm going to be having a total of 10 equipment slots that somebody could have. You could do whatever you want, but this is where you would specify. So we're going to go ahead and do 10 elements. So 0 to 9. This is also where you could be like, hey, I want them to have a built-in potion, so you could do that as well. Just set the order that you want. For me, I'm going to do helmet first. We're then going to go into armor, glove, and then another glove. Next is pants. Then we'll do main hand, offhand, boots, and then we'll have 2 rings. So this is how we're going to identify what slots are for what. This is primarily so that the UI knows, as well as the component for like when adding an item, you know where to put it. I found this to be easier. You could kind of reorganize that however you wish. I didn't want to have 2 arrays for items, and I got recommendation from someone in the community who's been helping me a lot with this. So huge thanks to Mr. Survival for all of his assistance with this. And that's me giving a shout out to him because he well deserves it. Category is going to be bag. And let's drag this over here. Last one is going to be a save name. It's going to be a string. This is so that when we end up creating our save name, that we end up having the same file name for everything, which is just going to be inventory. And recategorize this to save. That is our variables. I'm also going to create 3 dispatchers right now. Oh, I didn't mean to open that, but these are going to be called for updating the UI later down the road. Right now, let's just go ahead and create them, and then we'll use them throughout making our functions. So the first one is going to be update gear item. Second one's going to be update bag item. And the third is going to be update all items. So the update gear item is for we want to update just a specific gear slot. And the reason why we're separating the bag and the gear dispatchers is just so that it's less logic we need to create within the UI. I really didn't want the UI to have to do extra calculations for figuring out what's a gear and what's not. This is where having 2 arrays could be useful. But again, I really hated that because it made me make a lot more functions. I didn't want to do that. So the gear item and bag item dispatchers are going to have 2 inputs that are going to be the same. The first one is going to be an index. This is so that we know what index it is going to be updating. And the next is going to be the item. So this is the reference to the item. We'll go ahead, do 2 here, item, change this to integer, index. The last one, the update all items, we are going to pass along the inventory system itself. Inventory. And that's because by passing along an array, it ends up causing a lot of issues, and I found this to be the easiest way. If you end up getting dispatchers to work with arrays and making that suitable where it's passing along information successfully, like feel free to comment. I'd love to hear how you managed to do that. But without C++, I made that. But nonetheless, that gets us all of the variables and dispatchers. So let's create our pure functions. So things that are going to help us make our life a little easier. The main thing that we are going to create is to pass along the length of our bag size as well as the gear size and doing calculations for that. And then just passing along the gear and bag items themselves so that we don't have to worry about doing a lot of calculations throughout all of our functions. So if we wanted to just get bag items, since I put them all into one array, I want to make sure I'm not sending gear as well, because that would be a little frustrating down the road. So let's go ahead with get bag and get gear. So get gear, we are going to want to pass along only the items that we actually want from our bag. And to do that, we need to loop based upon for loop how many items that we have, which if we grabbed our gear slots, we'll do length. And then we also want to minus 1 because the length is always like the number of items and not the index. You could do last index as well. So if you wanted to do last index instead of having to subtract 1, you can also do that as well. Showing you both options that are available because it does depend on what you're doing. And for here, I'm also going to collapse this into a function. I'm going to call this gear size. Turn that into a pure function, and the return is going to be length. And that way, later down the road, we can pass this along, and we don't have to worry too much about having to constantly doing last index. I'm going to categorize this as gear pure. Like I said, that's just kind of how I'm doing it with my organization. Gear, vertical bar, space, and pure. This one is going to be bag, vertical bar, pure. So now that we got our length, we want to then do get from here. I just want to make it neater. And then we'll do add to an array, plug this in, promote this to a local variable, and we'll call this copy bag. Let's actually drag this back down. And essentially what we're doing is we are getting the gear and we're adding into another array so that we can then return that array, which will only pass along the gear itself. And we don't have to worry about passing along other bag items. This is going to be great for our UI as well, so that our UI can only grab the gear for the ones that are updating gear. So now that we have get gear set, let's go ahead and do get bag. We're going to go grab our bag. We're going to promote this to a local variable. This is going to be the copy of our bag. And we're going to do the reverse. So over here, we were getting all of them that are our gear, but now we're actually going to subtract. It's actually a lot easier to subtract the gear versus adding all items into a new array, because the gear is always going to be like a fixed small amount where your bag could end up being like 40 items. It could be 100, it could be 200, whatever it is. You don't want to iterate through everything endlessly if there is a better way to go about doing it. So we're going to go ahead and do another for loop. Wow, I keep saying go ahead. Sorry about that if you get annoyed by that phrase after these oh so long minutes. Last index is going to be the gear size. Grab that again. And next, we're going to subtract, plug in that index. We'll grabbing the copy bag, and we'll do remove index and plug that in. The reason why we are subtracting from the gear size is that this index is going to start from 0. And I cannot do iterations like 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4 and start from there, because if we remove index 0, index 1 will then become index 0. So you end up having to change your calculation on how you're doing this. This kind of inverts the subtraction. So we actually start from 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Then we'll return and plug that in. This will be the bag items. And that allows us to pass along all bag items. And our get gear, we did gear items. Okay, cool. Next, let's duplicate gear size and do bag size. And put that into the pure. Also, when you drag and drop, it removes the spaces. So it may be better to just, when you categorize, to not have spaces. Because then otherwise you end up having weird separations where it's like two things exist. They organize the same, but they miss a space. So it's technically not the same. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Gear. Compile. That should get rid of all the duplicates. Or they're still there for some reason. Whatever. So with bag size, grab the bag, last index. We want to subtract the 2. Now, while that does work, we need to make sure that when we do subtract, the bag length is never in the negatives. So for example, if you're currently holding one item, you don't want to subtract, or you don't want to have 1 and then subtract 9, because then you're going to end up with like -8. When in reality, the bag is just at like 1 or 0, etc. So we'll do max. And we want to make sure the minimum number that is ever provided is 0. So this shows that if it ever gets below 0, it's going to use the 0 number. Make sure all of these are pure functions, as they should be. I thought I got rid of all the spaces. Where did they come from? Anyways. Technically, you could grab gear size here, but honestly, there's nothing in it, so it doesn't really matter. All right, moving on from there, we need to get the max size of the bag itself, so only bag items, not gear. So we're going to do is bag max. We'll grab the bag size, max slots, and equal. Now, the only thing with this is that our bag size is the last index, which means this is always going to be 1 less. So we want to do add 1, like so, or instead of using this bag size, you could grab this and do like. But if you do that, you have to do more calculations like subtracting from the gear slots, etc. So this is what we're doing right now. Do a return. And is full as the return. And that just lets us check to see, hey, are we at max items or not? Next up is can stack slot. It's going to be another bag function where we want to check to see if a item is available to continuously stack. So like if we have a potion, if we want it to at least hold up to like 50 potions, we need to say, hey, are you at 50? If not, do you even exist in this inventory, etc. So input is going to be item, or DA item, sorry. If you type item, you won't find it, or you'll have to scroll through a lot because that's very generic. Item. Grab our bag. Loop. And a couple things we're going to need to check here. So while we go through our bag, the first thing we want to do is check is valid. We need to make sure that this actually is an item and it's not an empty slot. Because if it's empty and you try to pull information, you're going to get an error. It's going to be annoying. So we want to then use our data assets functions that we created. I'll open it up right here to kind of showcase. So we have all of these functions, and this is where we're going to start using them. We're going to do the can add. And remember, can add is just checking to make sure there is available slots. And then let's do a little dot right here. And then we're also going to check origin matching. We want to make sure that they are the same items, so we're going to compare the origins. This is just taking the origin variable and comparing the two. This just stops us from needing to grab origin from here and then doing comparison, etc. Technically speaking, you could do item from here and then do origin and plug that in. Like that would work too. I didn't do that in this case, but you can. There's no harm done in that. And it just means you wouldn't have to do origin from here. It's like the only comparison that we do with the origin anyways. So anyways, options. Plug these two in. From here, if this is valid, we will in fact continue. Branch. Plug that in. Just want to move that over. If we, in fact, have an item, it has slots available, we want to make sure that we pass along the slot. So output is going to be a bool. We'll say has item. If it's true, we do have the item. And then we also want to pass along the item reference. Zooming back in, and item ref. So that passes along the item to say, hey, we actually have it. Here you go. If we do not find anything, we do not have the item, you do not pass go, and we give them no info. So go ahead and do whatever you want there. You could do a print statement if that ever happens, if you want to check, etc. For the gear, we have two more functions to make, and that will end this section. This is going to be has empty slot. So like we check with the bag for slots, we need to also check if the gear is available. This is going to only check to make sure that we don't currently have something else equipped. If you do have something equipped, you have to do something else for that. Grab this here. We're going to loop. Remember that our gear slot has all of our organization on where everything goes, so it has all of the tags, and that's why we're using this. In this function, let's save this as an index. We're gonna put an input of item, DA item. A lot of our inputs are going to be item because, well, go figure, everything is manipulating items, so we're using it for everything. Item, get item. Item type. And we want to check to see if our current item that we have compares to the gear slots that we have listed here. Equal. Plug that in. We're going to loop this over. I'm going to hit compile because the lines aren't visible and move that over. So if these two do match, then we also want to check, is the slot currently empty? Since this one is for checking if the slot is empty before adding, we need to also make sure that the slot is currently empty. Grab the bag, do get index, we want to check if is valid, and then not bool, and slap that on top. So what we're doing is we're checking, hey, are you currently valid? And then we want to reverse that. So if this comes out to be true, this is now going to be false. So technically what we want to see is, are you invalid? But since there is not an invalid option, we just reverse the is valid. And bam. Throw in a branch. Plug that in. And if all of this is true, the item is the same, they're both helmets, they're both pants, whatever, and the slot is currently empty, we now want to return true. And from here, we want to provide the integer index. Plug that in here. Oh, sorry. Index ref. Compile. I named them the same thing, so therefore it got all funky. Don't name the local variables the same as the outputs. There we go. That fixes that. If we never find anything, nothing is ever valid, we want to then return. And I like to use -1. So that way, after all of this, if we find nothing, it returns -1. The index will never be below 0, so that's why -1 works. And lastly, we have one last thing that we want to make. This is going to be a helper function that doesn't currently have use, that you will not understand until we get to the functions, but this is going to be called the minus gear. Grab in gear slots. We're going to grab the length. Is it length that we want? Bear with me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Minus, I said subtract. Plug that in here. Return. Plug that in here. So essentially what we'll end up doing later down the road is, when we are passing along indexes for the bag, we need to remove the length of the gear so that we can find just the index lengths for like bag items without using gear slots. This reduces some calculations down the road, so the UI itself doesn't have to do calculations, because I wanted to keep everything centralized to what it's related to instead of making the UI do more work. And it's better to just have things centralized. So that's where this function comes in handy. That gets us all 8 of our current pure functions, and make sure all of them are labeled as pure. And double checking all of there. Perfect. All right, that ends this section. Now let's get on to the main functions for adding items to our bag and to our gear. So first things first, let's handle a new bag. This is for the start of the game. Move this over here and name this function. This is for a brand new bag from the start. So whether we are clearing the inventory, giving them a brand new inventory, etc. Grab the bag, clear. Like so. We're then going to do a for each loop. We're going to grab this, plug that into here. Grab our bag. Set array element. And bam. Hit size to fit. And all that's going to do is that no matter what, at the start of the game, you will always have items appearing for your gear slots. So whether they are empty or not, well, they're going to be empty from the start. But if you have like starter items that you want to give, there can be an array for that. You could switch this out for that. So instead of doing gear slots, you could do starter items, whatever it may be. You could end up calling this for that. This is only for those that are not, or this will only be called if somebody doesn't have like saved items. So if somebody's like loading, clearly you're not going to give them a brand new bag. You're not going to clear all their items. But for like a new character, that's what this would be used for. Next is add to bag. This is going to be the main big function. This is going to handle all of our logic with checking if a item is currently available, and then kind of lots of branches into what to do next. So from the start, the input is going to be a DA item. This is going to be a new item. And the first thing we need to check is can stack slot. This is the function where it checks to see if we currently have an item that equals to this new item. And then it also checks, hey, is there any slots available so that we can add more stacks to it. Branch. So if it is in fact true, we want to save this to a local variable. We'll call this item slot. So this will save the current item we have. From here, since we currently have the item, we want to then add amount, get the new item, get the amount for the new item, and then add these two together. So this will just combine our current slot. So if our current slot has 1 potion and we're adding 2 more, the end result will be 3. So then we'd be able to stack that on, and then we would continue on. from here, if our remainder is ever greater than 0, so in our addAmount function, we made sure that it would never be below 0. So if this is ever greater than 0, we're going to branch off again. Told you there's going to be quite a lot of it because there's a lot of conditions to meet depending on what we're doing. Now for the remainder, if it is greater than 0, or actually, let's do this. We'll promote this to a local variable. We'll call this remainder. And if remainder is ever greater than 0, we then need to take that extra amount and then try to add it to our other bag slots. So if we end up reaching 5, we need to say, hey, what do we do with the other 2 that are left over? We take our new item, we get the set amount, and we plug in the remainder. So our current potion had 2 left over, so obviously it is greater than 0. And then we want our item, the new item that has not been added to our bag yet, to now be like, hey, we're going to set you to 2, and then we want to try to add to bag again. And plug that in. And we'll say with the remaining 2 potions that we have yet to do anything with, try to add to the bag again. If the bag cannot add the item, we then want to drop it. So we're going to then do a bool at the end for our add to bag function. And we'll just say drop. And return, we would plug this in. Now we're almost done. Between this, what we need to do is also communicate with anything that would be listening to our inventory. So for example, our UI, we would do update bag item and call. So anybody that's listening to our bag, we want to be like, hey, we had a change. Here are the changes. Please update, etc. So for here, we grab our bag. We'll do a find and item slot. So what this will do is this is going to find the index for our current item slot that we have, and then we want to call the bag item. However, this is where we're going to do the minus gear. This is where we subtract the length of our gear, like so, and plug that in. And that's because when we pass along our bag items, it's going to start from the index of 0. If we were to call this without subtracting the gear, all the indexes are going to be an increase of 9. So we don't want that. So this is the length, right? Okay. And then for the item to pass along, that's going to be the item slot here. Oh, I thought I copied it. There we go. Remember, this is the item slot and not the new item. So as we went through, we were adding a stack to the item slot, and we didn't add the new item to the bag yet. That's where this calls. So this is only for stacking. So just bear in mind with that, so you don't plug in the wrong one. It can get confusing. So let's go all the way back to the front, because we've only done all of the true statements. And now we need to start going through what the false ones look like. So with the false, we're going to break this down to another branch. So if we don't currently have an item to stack, the next thing is, hey, is our bag full? Please check before we try adding in another item. If our bag is in fact full right now, we will return and we'll say, hey, we're full, please drop your item. We can't do that right now. If it is not full, we'll grab our bag and we'll add. And this will just add it to our bag as another item. Since we always establish that the bag is going to have at minimum what the gear slots are, we can always add and it's safe. If you do not do the new bag where you add slots, you want to make sure that you don't do just a normal add, you do a set array element, and make sure to set what the index is, which will be whatever the length of the bag is. So if you don't do the function that I use, you can do length, set array, and you can do this instead, this part. So if you do length, it's always going to be 1 plus the last index, which is perfect for setting the next index. But also bear in mind, if you do that, it's going to set it at the end of the bag, which is a lot more calculations you have to be worried about. So just keep that in mind. We're going to grab our new item and we're going to add it to our bag. So now that we are adding this to our bag, let's communicate with our UI that, hey, please update the bag. Here's the brand new index. Here's the brand new item. And remember, we always want to make sure that we are subtracting the gear amount. So go over here and plug that in here. Bam. And you never really have to worry about this ever going into the negatives because the bag length amount is always going to be greater than the gear. So at minimum, the value would hit 0. So you don't have to worry about that. And then we'll do a return. And we are not dropping it because we have added the item. We don't have to worry about that. Now going all the way back up, our next scenario, hey, can we stack the item? Cool, we can stack. We're going through, adding the amount. Hey, on the remainder, how many do we have left? If the remainder equals 0, we want to then just communicate with our UI. And tell the UI to update the information. Grab all of this here, copy it, and paste. And plug that in here. And for the sake of neatness, drag this down so that we can also drag this down and line that up like so. And then we will return. Bam. This is our biggest function. As you can see, it branches off 1, 2, 3 times. Yeah. That covers the wide range of scenarios. Now let's create the drop item function. Oh, I did move over there. That was weird. Item. DA item. And what we want to do is grab our bag, find, plug that in here, save this to a local variable, call it index. Take our bag, remove index, like so. Hey, it's me from the future. Don't do this, what you're seeing right now. So we'll actually be editing this at the end of the video during the debugging session. Um, the issue with this function is that we need to be using an index to get the item, and then we remove the item from the array by using that index. So you need to change the input, and you also need to kind of rearrange that function. We do this at the end of the video. Ooh, almost send you guys into having a very painful time. So, because we use two different dispatchers, I made two different functions. This is the only duplicate function that occurs, but I just found it better to have two dispatchers because in the long run, it made my life a lot easier. But if you end up doing one function, like that works fine. Just make sure you cover all your bases. Now, let's do the add gear function. For the gear, we want an input, a new item. We need to check has empty slot. This tells us, hey, is the gear slot currently empty? There's no item currently in it. If it is, please give me the index. And then we want to promote that to local variable, and we'll call this found index. If nothing is found, it's going to return -1 because I set it to -1. We'll do equal. If this does equal -1, branch. Hit compile because my lines disappear. Now, if, hey, I tried picking up the gear, it said we don't currently have that slot available. What do we do with the item? Next, that means we want to add to bag. So drag it over here. We grab the new item. And then we return. And then also pass along the drop. So this is, if you ever call the add to gear, you can let them know if the item ever drops. If, hey, I did find the index, it is available, we can add this gear. We're going to grab the bag, set array element. We're going to do the found index. And we're going to add the new item. Theoretically, you should never need to click this here, but I'm going to go ahead and do that as like a safety measure because it's not going to really harm me if not, because I have this specific index. But for whatever reason, if something ever went haywire with the bag, I can still set the item. And then we want to do update gear item. This is where we then plug in the index. And we update with the new item here. I was thinking it was a local variable, but it's a parameter. And return. And because we added the item, set it here, put it in, we're not dropping. I do not have gear that stacks. If you have gear that does stack, you need to do a lot of these checks that we did with the add to bag, like adding a mount and doing all of this. So that's where duplicate work could appear, or you could use the same function but modify it for gear and bag. I do not stack. I don't want equipment that stacks. That's weird to me, so I'm not doing that. But if you do run into that, I wanted you to be aware that that is a thing. All right. So that covers all of the functions that we have to build for our inventory system. That doesn't count the save system, which is a separate section. That is going to be later. All right, so it's later now. Let's add in the save function. So add in here. We're going to have a save items and a load items. Save. And then we're going to put this in one more category called item. We're going to add two more functions. This is going to be save struct and load structs. Put this into the save, and then this is going to be struct, and put that in here. Okay, so the reason why we created 4 is because when we save and load items, we also have to manipulate structures. As I said at the very beginning, if you remember, is that data assets are unable to be saved directly. So if we were to create a brand new data asset, that created data asset can't just be put inside of a save game and then get stored there. When we end up creating it in the game, we create a brand new data asset and has brand new information. So when we want to store it into a save game file, we need to then turn it into a structure and then save that structure. And then later on, when we want to load, we have to then load those structs. So to go into saved items, what we need is to then call in our save structs. The save structs is going to have an output of f save item that we created in the beginning of the video, and we'll call this bag items. Turn that into an array. These would then get stored into a local variable. We'll call this just like local bag or something like that. And then from here, we go, does save game exist? This is where we plug in the save name. So this is just the file name, or the save game name that we're giving it. So we have stored in our bags. We are now checking, hey, is there currently a save file here? We will then branch. If save game file does exist, then let's load game from slab and then plug in here. And then we want to then have a save game object that we can use. Right now we don't have one, so let's go ahead and create one. We'll make a generic folder like object. There'll be a few generic things that we add here. So save game. SG for save game, and we'll just do inventory. For the save game, we like to use it just to store information, and that's it. So add a variable, saved bag. This is going to be the save item. Turn that into an array. And that's it. And we're done. Go back into the inventory. We'll then cast to SG inventory. You could make an interface if you want to cast. We won't be calling this often unless you're trying to like save game every couple of minutes. Then maybe, or not even a couple of minutes. Like you'd have to save often for this to be a problem. Anywho, local variable. Call this save object. That saved bag, the variable that we created. Throw in the local variable that we created in the beginning right here. Plug it in. And then do save game to slot. Use our object, use the save name. And we could just do like a print statement and append save items space and just let me know if it's true or not. Super simple. Now, if slot does not exist, create save game object. We want the SG inventory. Store that as a variable. Do the same thing here. Plug that in. And what I'm going to do is this. Or actually, we could do this. Hold on. Store that here. Plug that in. And here. Bam. So that way we just save it and set the information. And then save it. Well, load or create and then save. That will handle our save items. Now for our structs. What we want to do is a long process of getting our items and converting them into structures. Grab bag for each loop. We will check to see is valid. So if an item does exist, then we'll allow doing something. If the item does exist, convert struct and promote that to a local variable and call that local struct. Like so. That's like a, all right, whatever. Good enough. If it is not valid, throw this down and leave it blank. This is so that no matter what, we are always having a slot there. But if there's no item, like you have an empty slot, we want to make sure it reflects as empty in the save game. We then, let's go turn this into another variable. Call this local, where in the world do you see local bags or local bag? Bag. All right, whatever. Don't be mean. Save bag, I guess. Turn that into an array. Drag that in here. hit add, grab the local struct, plug that in. There. That way, no matter what, it goes through and it is saving some value there. If we don't do this part, you'll end up skipping. And then when somebody loads in the item, they won't have any gaps. That'd be really bad for your gear. So, yeah, careful on that. Then we want to return with the bag that we have. All right. Sorry. So now save structs is complete. Get rid of that up top. Our save items would now work as intended because now we can pass along. Now let's go into the save and load items. So for save and load items, yeah. Oh, did I mix up structs in? No. Okay. We did save items, and now we want to do loads. My bad. Don't mean to confuse you. Loading is going to do the opposite. We have our array of save items. Save back. We'll loop. Local variable. This is the item struct. We will then break. Check is valid. This will let us know, hey, does an origin currently exist? If not, do something different. So if origin does exist, we want to construct an object from class. This is where we start using the origin. We'll go into DA items, and go over here. Let's make all of the variables we have listed exposed. So make it instance editable and exposed on spawn. And there we go. Now, if you were to refresh this, all the options are here. Perfect. Grab the local and break. You can also use the same one over here, but I like tidiness. And that passes along all of the information. And then we want to promote that to a variable, turn it to an array. Yeah, change type, that's fine. Call this new items. Add here. So when we construct something new, we're going to add it into our array. If origin is not valid, this means it is empty. We will grab new items and add. And that is it. I guess I could probably do this. All right, that's kind of cleaner, I guess. And then now that we have all of our new items, we're going to grab this here and set bag to new items. Technically, you could avoid using this by grabbing your bag in the beginning, and you could do clear and then go through that, but using a local variable works too. That allows us to load items. So what we want to do is handle the loading of the structures. So kind of the reverse. Oh, actually, I load item, load struct. So this is meant to be load struct. So, and this is meant to be load item. I am so sorry. I do not mean to mix you up. I could edit this and fix it. But I don't want to. So. Okay. So grab this, and does save game exist? Gonna do the same thing. We're gonna branch. Hey, do we currently have a save game? If we do not have a save game, please create a new bag. So it's saying, hey, we have no items, we have nothing there, just make a brand new bag. If we do, let's load the game. Yes, to she inventory. And save game. Saved bag. Plop this down, plug that in, and now we're loading all of the structs. And then now that we have loaded everything, please update all items, sir. And sell. And this will get fired off at the very beginning of the game. So ideally, you want this to be called once everything is done. For my instance, I'm going to be using in the begin play, but in like, let's say your character has to do a couple things when the game begins. You want to then call, hey, please load my items, and then it will do whatever it needs to. Because of the way that I have it set up, and because we're going to end up doing UI stuff, I'm going to do a little delay as like a workaround, and then load items. It would be a lot easier if you just have somebody call load items when it is an appropriate time. I do not have that because I don't have an actual game structure. And that will allow us to load items. And let's create a debug 2 key, a debug 3 key. This will save items. And this will delete game in slot. Plug that in. And print. Delete, save game, slot. These will just be 2 functions that we'll use later. But that puts the end for the component part. And next we need to shift into the UI. Next, we're going to begin with the UI. So with that, you want to go into plugins and turn on common UI if you want to follow along with this video. Now, what I am using, you can still use with just the common user widgets. However, I'm going to be using the common UI versions as that's just how my tutorials go. I use the common UI plugin. It's just what I'm known for. If you choose not to do that, there may be specific nodes that you do not have within the common user widgets. So just bear in mind with that. But overall, you should have majority of the functionality. Once that is turned on, make sure you go into the game viewport client class and make sure to turn that on. There's other common UI settings. I'm not going in depth on all of them. We're just going to enable the widgets and go from there. I'm not doing the other mumbo jumbo right now. So with the UI, we're going to go ahead and make a new folder. A lot of the UI is just getting the visuals to work. The functionality itself is a lot clearer. And actually doesn't take as much time. So common activatable widget is what we will be doing here. We'll do a UI inventory, and then we're going to copy that, call this UI to gear panel, UI bag panel. I'm going to split this up into gear and bag. Throw the gear into here. And throw the panel bag into here. Okay. The overall UI inventory we're not going to touch right now. We're going to work on the gear panel. With activatable widgets, make sure to turn on auto activate. That is important to have. Otherwise, you'll be like, where's my widget? So with these visuals, I have already done this beforehand to kind of figure out where all these specific layouts is and everything. So you will see me type in a lot of numbers that I already know. And that's honestly to save us a lot of time and not sit here trying to recreate very specific images that we have. So I'm going to put down a border. We're also going to change this to custom. The height is going to be 592 and 318. This is the very specific size for the gear panel. And for the brush, we're going to change to an image. I think it is gear, or sorry, background. Equipment. Perfect. Let's zoom in so you guys can see a bit better. Next is a vertical box. Get rid of that padding. Grab another border. Throw this over here. This is on auto. Get rid of padding. And we'll actually put a padding on top. This is where we're going to end up putting a name. So we'll do common text. Like so. Put Mr. Boutier. We do not have a style yet, so I'm going to try to paste in this color here. Here is to see the actual color if you want to see it. This is to help match with what we have listed. And we stick that into the center. For the border, we're going to rename this to header. I'm going to try to keep this as organized as possible. I know I'm not going too in depth on what I am specifically building because I don't want you guys to sit here for the next 2 hours with that type of explanation. If everyone wants a video of me showing exactly how I went about creating this, I can do a video on that, but that should be a separate thing. I do not want to mix that into this bunch of chaos. All right. So with the appearance of this border is going to be the title player. And for the text, let's change the font like so, and light. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, okay. We'll call this player name. Now this you could turn into a variable to use at a later point in time. Since I personally am not going to worry about handling names at the moment, that's not really on my top of the list. We're going to grab a spacer. And for this spacer, it's going to be 1 by 12. We want a little gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the level right here. So we'll grab another text here. And let's just do like level 12. And the font should be, let's go with 18. Zero. I feel like the text here should be smaller. I think it's 19.87. Very oddly specific. There we go. Like I said, I had to play around with a lot of numbers to kind of get exactly the visuals that I wanted to match up with the assets that I was given. To kind of show you example of what we're building, as I should have showed that in the beginning, this is what I am creating. There's a couple things we're going to be ignoring right now. We are not going to have the stats button. We are not going to have gold, no search bar, and no XP bar right now. That does not extend this current video. We will expand that at a later time, but we are not building those aspects because that would take much, much longer. So you will not see them at this time. Player level. Next is going to be a grid. I believe I use, I'm not sure if it was uniform or just grid. If I have to switch this over later. I guess you won't know about it if I do. Slot padding is going to be 5.5. And it extends. Now what we need to do is, let's just keep this open so that everybody is available. And when I talk through, we are going to create these individual slots as well as making sure all the images are set accordingly. All right, so going into the gear, we need to now create the individual slots. Oop. And we'll just use a common user widget. UI gear slot. Now the main thing this gear slot needs is a button so that it is clickable. And then it also is going to need to have an icon and a background. So we're going to get a button. I could create a common button, but I don't want to make a style for it. So we're not going to worry about that right now. And what we'll do is we're going to leave that as none, draw as none, so that normal has nothing there. And then for this, we're going to do selection for a hovered. Dun, dun, dun. Image. And let's do, I want to say 0.7. And then as pressed, let's not worry about that right now. Okay. And then we don't do disabled, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. It is set to visible, and we're going to switch this to just say button. Next is going to be a scale box. This is going to be 0 padding, fill all around, scale to fit, and both. Then we will have a overlay. Fill. Why must you make me have numbers, please? I don't like having numbers, so I tend to get rid of them. Next, let's do image and 2. This will be background, fill, and this will be icon, fill. Let's do desired. For the background image, oh wait, why are they not filling out completely as desired? Oh, it's probably the image size. So for the image size, by default, we're going to just use cell pants. And then for icon, wait, sorry, 8484. For icon, we're going to use link. And this is going to also be is it going to be 84? 84, 85, 84? Yeah. Okay. Where's that spacing coming from, actually? There it is. Normal padding. Okay. There. Now we have no odd spacing. I forgot buttons by default are trying to put in. Okay. So now that we have things clicked in, this is what it looks like. We should have a hover state as well. Since we're not handling the other states, I didn't want to really go into doing a style. Next, we right now have a default image that is being set for our gear slot, which is this. However, on our image, we have where purple highlight is coming in different sections. So I want to be able to change that according to whatever I select. So under pre-construct, I'm going to grab our background. We'll set brush from texture. Promote that to variable. And I'm going to just do BG as in background image. Why are you hiding behind this event? There we go. And then by default, we've got to compile to enter a default, will be cell pants. And that'll set it to that image anyways. But now when we click on our gear slot, we could change this to other things if we so choose. So you see how it changes, which will match with the design that we have set. Next is going to be creating an event to allow us to set the item. Now, right now, what I'm going to do is do a custom event called set item. This is going to change in a second, but we're going to build the event first and then do that part after. So we're going to do an input, DA item. I don't know where the word input came from me. And just name that item. Do is valid. So if this item is in fact valid, then I want you to store this value as our item. So that it knows exactly what item it is using. Since it is a data asset, it's actually not that heavy, so it's not bad at all. If item is not valid, I want us to have a backup for the icon. And all I'm going to be using is that blank image so that it stays empty. So if we ever pass along blank, then as such, the image will be blank. So as of right now, the image should be blank because we have not set the item to anything. I think even if we were to call that, nothing would happen right now. If the image is in fact set, we want to grab the item, want to get the icon, we also need to make sure icon is valid, do a select. So what I did is I did this with select as a safety measure in case a texture is never set. It is technically good to be careful on what you're making, but I have icon set, so I'm not going to do that part, but it's always good to make sure you're not using blank information. Set brush from texture. Here. And then we're going to make sure it doesn't do match to size because I want it to stay the size of my button. Next, what I'll do is let's go ahead and grab the button on click event. And what we'll do is that when this button is clicked, I'm gonna get player character, get component by class, AC inventory, and then drop gear. And this will be item. So this is just that if this button ends up being clicked on, then we have the ability to drop the item. And then I'll also do print will append drop space item type. Like, oh, there we go. And that is just so that we know what we're dropping. Or actually, instead of doing the tag, let's just do name. That seems more suiting. That gives us an on click, and that allows us to set the information. And then this is actually the part where we're going to now replace this. We're going to make an interface. Interface. It's going to be BI UI items. Name it however you want. It's really, really up to you on however you organize that. We're going to get two functions. One is going to be the get item, and one of them is going to be the set item. The set item is going to take an input of item. Sorry, DA item. I always forget. And get item will take a output of said item. That is it for that. Going into here, back to our gear slot class settings, we'll then BI UI items, get item, we could just plug that in there. Set item, we'll then remove this, plug that in as such. All right. Let's go expose both the background image and the item. I guess we could expose them to on spawn too, but instance editable should be well enough because I'm not spawning them, but it is up to you on how you end up utilizing these. All right, now that the gear slots are made, we can do gear slot 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Renaming all of these. Armor. Now that those have been renamed, we're now going to move them all into their respected columns. So for the helmet is going to start up here, and then we're going to move into the armor, pants, boots. These are rings, weapons, and then gloves. So we'll move this to 1. Armor is going to be, I think it's center, so 1, 1. Gloves left. This is going to be 1, 0 because we want it to stay on the left, and this is going to be 1, 2. So that spaces that out. Pants, row 2, column 1. It's going to be in the center. Main hand 2, 0, and this is going to be 2, 2. Boots. What was boots? Boots at the bottom. So what is that? 2, 3, 1. And then this is going to be 3, 0, 3, 2. Bam. Okay. And I think that's spaced out well enough. Yeah, that's, you know what, that's good enough. Okay. Moving all of these images around, I named them to make it a bit easier. Helmet. Glove left. Glove right. Pants. Wait. No, sorry. Main hand. Offhand. Those are pants. Boots. Ring 2. Ring 1. I think that's matching the image. Yep, cool. That gives us that. So now that we have our visuals here, let's go into the graph and start making things work. Under the pre-construct, what we need to do is we need all of our slots to be able to associate with a gear slot. So in the way to do that, I'm going to be using a index just because that's going to make things a lot simple. So when we get an index from the inventory system, we can just use that same index to set whatever gear slot. So I'm going to go into the gear slot, make a new variable. We'll just call this gear slot. Make it an integer, expose it. I don't think we have to expose it on spawn, but make it instance editable. And then, sorry, this item should not be exposed because that actually gets set here. So yeah, we don't want to do that. Just have those two exposed. So that way, when we are in the designer, we only see those two options. So now that we have an index, we want to then set what each index is. This is going to be following your inventory, what you have set here, like so. So if you create your own custom thing, like where you have different types of things set, just try to put them in order as the way that you would want to display them in the UI. Sorry, that's not the gear slot's not what we wanted, but as in here. So like I have my weapons right here. You could have like shoulders up here. You could have something else here or add in more slots, whatever you want to do. The world is your oyster. So we're going to 0, and then armor is 1. So we're going to follow this with glove, glove, pants, main hand, offhand, boots, ring, ring. So these are going to be 2, 3. Pants is going to be 4. So I go center, and then I do the other ones. So this is going to be 5, 6. And then boots are 7, and then we go 8, 9. So that gives us 0 to 9. We have all of those set. Now we're going to go over back to our pre-construct. We're going to make an array That's not an array. Call this gear slots. This is going to be our gear slot UI. Oh, I didn't make this an array. Yeah. Clear. So on pre-construct, we want to make sure that we clear out because pre-construct could fire off pretty much every time you open the designer. And then we want to grab all of the children for the container for these slots. So gear container is in fact a variable. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Grabbing the gear container. Get all children. And we will loop. Now for this is being fired off only once. So I feel comfortable doing this. I'm going to cast to UI gear slot. If you were constantly opening and closing your gear and doing many things with setting them, then try to think of a more efficient way than casting. But I am only casting this and then setting this into a array. So yeah, I know some people get weird about casting. So to each their own. We will then set this array, and the index is going to be the gear slot variable that we have added. And the item is going to be the gear slot itself. And size to fit. So now we will have an array that contains all of our gear slots, and we know exactly which ones to set. Opening up our construct. Let's move this down. Let's get player character. We want to get our component by class, which is going to be the inventory. And now we want our UI to listen to when we call the update gear item and the update all items. So bind event to update gear item. And then we also want to do bind event on all items. Then we'll do a create event. Create a matching function. It gives you this weird generated function name, which is really weird because it doesn't even relate to the update gear item. But we'll do update single item. We'll also do create event and do the exact same thing. And rename this to update all items. For this, we will get gear. So since we have reference to our inventory when we get an update for all of our items, we will then get the gear that we created. So it just gives us the gear items. We will then do loop. Grabbing our gear slots. We will get plug in that index. I guess we can have it kind of loop in weirdness ways. From this UI gear slot that we have, we will then send a message called set item. Oh, I guess technically we wouldn't even have to send a message since we have them. Huh. Well, that is a improvement that I seem to have missed, but yeah. We technically could have not used an interface here and just called the set item from the event since we did casting anyways. So it was a fun finding. And I'm not re-recording. So on the update all items, we go to the single item and I'm gonna paste this. And for this, you just plug that in and you plug that in. Bam. Let's do this. Get item. At least that looks a little better. Also with the update all items, since we used the inventory, we didn't have to pass along any specific item because we're getting it through the loop. And through here, we could just use the index as well as the item, so we didn't have to find anything. So that will allow us to get the items for here. And that is it for our gear panel. Moving to the bag panel. So now this is going to be for our inventory. This is for all the bagged items that are not equipment or that are not currently equipped. So for this, we are going to need to start off with a border. And let's set padding to 0. And this is going to be BG inventory. So kind of this faded background. Kind of faded. You'll notice there's a kind of bit of design lines that you may not notice. But yeah, the artist that did this did quite an exceptional job. Also, there'll be a link in the description for all of the art as well. Well, for the artists, there'll be a link to them, as well as all the images will be available within my GitHub. We're going to then grab an overlay. Throw this here. It's going to be the inventory header. Do I want an overlay for this? Kind of just need a image to stack. Now let's do a border. This will be inventory header. Then we'll get a text, common text. We could end up putting a style, but I'm not actually worrying about styles right now. Again, there'll be something else for, sorry, I didn't mean to open that. I meant to open up the gear slot because we're going to steal the info for this. So actually, I'm going to copy this entire thing and paste it in the bag panel. Single will erase its content. Yep, that's fine. Cool. We're going to change the text to say inventory. Change this to 0. This is going to be centered. Change this to 18. this image is going to be, oh, oops, misclick. It's going to be title bag. Yeah, it looks a little bit off right now, but that's okay. And let's go ahead and wrap this with a vertical box. Change this to custom. I hate it when it does that. Stop it. Thank you. I know this is 1,000. And if this is 800. There we go. This is going to be the size of this. That just gives us the header. I'm not doing the search bar, so that's why we're not really worried about that. And next is going to be the common tile view. Throwing this into the vertical box. And this will be our item list. As you can tell, we don't have a widget here, so therefore nothing works. Oh no, what do we do? Oh, sorry, I renamed the wrong thing. This is item list. Item list. Set that to fill. We got some custom padding we need to do. So we're gonna do 10, 18, 10, and we'll leave it at 0. Gives us a bit of odd spacing. We're gonna grab a spacer, which we're gonna throw at the bottom. And that's gonna be 64. Yeah, it's telling us we don't have a widget yet. So now we have to create our bag slot. So we do have the gear slot, which is not going to be exactly the same, but we're going to go ahead and copy it. And we're going to kind of override probably a lot of it, but we'll use some of it. Open that up. I'm going to move this over as such. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut. So Control X for Windows. I don't know what Mac uses, but yeah. Get rid of that button. Because we're using a tile view, you don't put a button in tile view because that's going to kind of override things. You can, but there's some other workaround you need to do. The tile view kind of turns everything into a button, technically. But there's some weirdness to it, but nonetheless. We're going to add an extra image, and this is going to be for our hover image. Like I said, it's kind of like a button, but it's kind of not. So for the hover image, we are going to turn this into selection. And then we're going to move this to, 74, 74. For the icon, big 74, 74 with padding of 8. And then background is just cell, plain, like so. Hover. I'm going to go ahead and hide that just so it's not in the way. Oh, wait, didn't I just change? Sir, I said cell. Oh, it's because of this, the pre-construct. Yeah, I was wondering. Delete that. We won't be using pre-construct because this is going to be a generated item. So there we go. We want a bit more of a blank slate here. Okay. So we're going to make a text. So let's grab this text and paste it. We're going to do a 5. feel like I should shrink this. Let's do like 15. And put that on the bottom to the right. And let's give it some padding, like not 50, 5. That should be good. This is so that when we stack items, there'll be some space there. Let's also get rid of that on clicked because I'm tired of seeing that. Now that we have all of those set, I think that is good. I think visuals all set there. We may need to make some slight adjustments to it at a later point in time, but that's fine. So since this will be generated within a tile view, we go to class settings. We need to implement an interface. This is going to be the user object list entry. On item selection, or sorry, it's going to be on list item object set. Sorry, there's a lot of functions. We will have an object that we want to do the get item. From here, we will then promote to variable. This is going to be, sorry, we already have that, so we'll do this as such. And that will give us the item, and now we can start adjusting what our visuals would look like based upon this item. So let's update the gear icon, sorry, the bag icon, set brush from texture. I think we called it icon. Nice. Patch that through. That will allow us to set the icon. And this is where I created that empty item. So when we end up passing along, we don't really have to do like valid checks because the icon's always going to exist. Grabbing the item, we now need to make sure that when our item stack is here, we want to be able to control when to see it or like when to hide it. So in this case, let's go ahead and remove the text here so that if there is no text, it just remains blank. And then going over into the graph, we will grab the amount. Oh, I just wanted the variable. Get amount. I also want the item type. This is where you're going to need to do some type of check for the type of item it is. In my case, I have one stacking item. It's going to be potions. I ain't stacking anything else. In your case, you could set an item type of like consumables or something of that, or like have something that is an identifier towards stacking and do that. That way you make your life a lot easier here. So for this, I'll do equal. And if it is a potion, then we will set the text based on the amount that we have here. So we'll do a select. And if this is true, we will then use this. And if not, or actually, let's do this. Instead of select that, we'll do this. I know I just said we'll do this like 4 times, but plug that in here. Or to text and plug that in. There we go. I like that better because now we can just pass along a text. We can leave this blank. We will grab our stack, make that a variable, set text, plug that in. So now if it is a potion, we will then have our text appear with a value. If it is not, it will just be blank and we don't have to worry about it. Then we want to do on entry released. We will get our item, or we'll set our item to empty. So when this is changed, it will then cause this icon to be that transparent image. And now we will do the hover events. Since this is not technically a button, I'm going to do on mouse enter. If you were doing controller, other things like that, you could do like on focus lost or on added to focus path, things like that. You can use those events instead. In this case, on mouse leave. I'm not doing that. I don't have to worry about that. So we'll do here. And we'll set visibility like so. When the mouse enters, it is visible. When it is not, it is collapsed. And all that's going to do is toggle this hover on and off. And I think for the hover, let's go to the image, turn that down. Just so that like when we have an icon, it's a bit more visible. Let's see. We don't need the gear slot because that doesn't apply to us. See. And then delete all of this above. And you could delete that variable as well. So we just need the item. Okay. Now back to the bag panel. We should see our widget available. Bam. Now it's a bit too large, so we need to adjust that. So let's go down to here, and we have entry height and width. Let's change this to 74 by 74. Even padding. Let's turn entries to 20. Turn this to not hit testable stealth only. Scroll into view. I'm gonna do top or left. Allow over scroll, I'm gonna turn off. And for spacing, we'll do 6 and 7.5. Compile. Bam. Okay, so they're a bit smaller. It's a bit easier to work with. We're going to leave that it's focusable. Consumes the... Yeah. Background brush. I don't have a background for this, so that's okay. I think we can leave all of that as is. Okay. So now that we have set all the bag slot information, we have set all of that. We now want to go into our bag panel. And now we want to generate all the images and items and all of that other fun jazz. Within the gear panel, I'm going to copy, I guess this part. You can copy like all of it and delete what you need. Going back into the bag panel. Bam. Because we're going to do very similar, where I'm going to do update, assign on bag item, create event. Create matching function. Update single item. Then we'll do bind on, oh, what? Oh, bind to update all items. Create event. Matching function. Update all items. That binds all of those together. Cool. What I also want to do is that on the item list, we have when an item is clicked and an item is double clicked, we have events that get fired off. So there's different things that you could do. In this case, I'm going to do on item double clicked. We'll move this over here. I'm going to kind of fix there. Okay. We will drop an item. So create a new function, drop item. Oh, sorry, I forgot. We need to make an input of object, have this blank item. Over here, we'll do get index for item. Plug that in. Update single item. Plug in here. Leave that blank. We're going to grab that item that we have now over here. Call the get item message. And then drop. Oh, sorry. Get player character. Get component by class. Inventory. Drop item. Make sure drop item is from bag and plug that in. And that will allow us to communicate with the player, hey, please just drop this item. We're now removing it from the UI. And that will occur on double click. Make sure to plug that in so that that is working. Under the update single item, we have item and the index. I am going to change item to new item just to make it visually easy. When we create an item, we cannot just pass along the data asset into the item list because data assets, if you were to update their variables, it does not trigger the tile view to update. So what we have to do is kind of a workaround. It's just a small object that we're going to create, which is going to contain the data asset as well as just a quantity amount. It is a workaround that I found. If you guys find a better way to use data assets within an item list, do let me know. I found this to be the simplest way to go about doing it. So we're going to create a just very bland object in our object folder. Select on object. This is going to be OB UI item. It's going to inherit the interface of our UI items. Double clicking the get item, promote this to a variable, and that is an item. Exposed on spawn, make it instance editable, and then we're also going to do the quantity, and this will be an integer. Also exposed. Then we'll do set. I don't believe we ever actually use this, but can't hurt to just use it in case it ever does get called, or if you ever call it. So that's all we need to do there. Going back to our bag panel. We need to now construct that object. So we need to bring it into existence. Create new object. We'll take the new item. DA item. Check is valid. If it is valid, we're then going to do a select. Basically means that, hey, if this item is valid, please use me. If we are not valid, please use DA empty. So that will just cause an empty slot to appear. It doesn't have really anything, so. Construct object from class. This is where we do the OB UI item. Plugging that into here. And grab the amount. That creates the object, and we'll just do a return. Bam. Object. And this is what we'll pass into the item list. Create new object. Promote this to a local variable called object reference or ref. Grabbing this item list, we're now going to set the items for all of it. So we're going to get the list items. I wonder if common, list. Yeah. It doesn't have a set specific index. So like index, you can get the index for an item, or you could just set like which one is currently like focused, which is not the same. So what we do is we get list items. It's where the workaround is. We're going to then promote this to a local variable, which is going to be new. Oh, that's not a local variable. New list. And from here, we'll do set array element. And the index is going to be what's passed in. And item will be the object reference and size to fit. So in case we have to increase it, we can. Now with changing the item list, we want to grab this and set list items. And it will be our new list. And then we'll request refresh. Oh. Request refresh. There we go. So we'll plug in our new array, and then we also tell it, hey, please update your visuals for us, please. Now, update all items. We'll grab our item list, get list items. This will be new list. Grabbing our inventory, since we have the variable here, we're going to get our bag. And then we're going to loop. And as we're looping through every item, we're going to create a brand new object, plug in this in, plug in that in, grabbing our new list, set array element. Technically, you could clear the list, make a brand new one. You don't have to grab the existing one, I guess. So you could probably eliminate this part and just do add. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with what I'm doing as a sanity check. And then just plug in here. Oh, this return should be... Oh, I changed the wrong one. The input is the item. The output is the object. There we go. I was like, why is object after? Or as the input? And size to fit. We'll then grab the item. Oh. Let's grab these two functions at the end and paste it. Now we can update all of our items. Dun, 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 dun. Now, before we finish, there's one function that we want to do, because as of right now, as you can tell, we have our items, but what if you want to fill up the entire UI with empty squares instead of just the specific items that you have? So we're going to create a function where it's going to be add row slots. And we're going to end up doing a bit of math. Not a lot, just a bit. inventory. And this is going to be our inventory component. So AC inventory. We're going to grab our max slots. We're going to do a for loop. Plug this in. And then plug this in. We're going to make the index start from 1, just because I don't want to do subtract max slots by 1. We'll create new object. It's going to be under DA empty, because they're just going to be blank slots. We're going to do a local variable called new list again. DA items. Make this an array. Oop, I meant to do get. And this is when we'll just do add and plug that in. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do DA items. I meant to do objects. And there we go. Okay. And since we are updating our list, we're going to grab those 2 functions, which I guess I could put into another function if I truly wanted to. Where was I? Okay. Bam. And by a bit of math, I meant we literally just loop that through. I think I had something else in mind that we didn't do. And on the event construct, we do this. And we plug that in. And bam. So with that, that means when the game begins, we're going to take our inventory. We're going to say, hey, how many slots you have? And then we're going to go through and add them so that we always have them available. You could technically call this before doing any binding events so that, for example, do this. Whoop. Whoop-de-whoop. Move this over. Kapow. And do that. And then that way, nothing is called before the binding actually exists. I don't think they would get called really anyways, but who knows? All right. Now that sets those. That would complete the bag panel. Now for the finishing touches, also make sure bag panel has auto activate on, otherwise you'll end up going through a bad experience. In our UI inventory, another activatable widget, we're going to turn on auto activate. Kind of just highlighting that because I see lots and lots of people forget to do that. So yeah. Let's grab us a canvas. Throwing this down. This canvas panel is going to have an image. With this image, it expands throughout the galaxy. Bam. Bright white. Hope it's not dark for you. 1062 on image size and 740. We're going to grab the window. Kapow. Look at that. Going to change this into custom. It's going to be 740 by 1062. All right. We have the preferred sizing. This is going to be background. Taking our inventory grid. Bag panel. And our gear panel. I'm going to remove the UI part for the visuals. And I'm actually going to add a space just because visuals. Okay, so for our, let's see, gear panel, under, come on, gear panel, we have it by 318,592. So it's going to be 318,592. Bag panel, 1,000. Oh, right here. 1,000. That can't be right. By 800. Uh, 652 593. That correct? Oh, did I have the wrong thing for here? 652 593. I guess that's the correct size. Wrong measurements. To each their own. Let's anchor that to the center. And very, very specific positioning that I already know because I went through painful times. Negative 316. Good pal. And we're just going to size this to fit the corners. That's our bag panel. Now for our gear panel. Position is negative 492. Hey, look, it's gone. Negative 316. Oh, that's awkward. My bad. 492. Negative 316. There we go. And let's put this in the four corners. Like so. All right. That is our image. While it is not 100% identical, it is pretty close other than the other features that are not going to be included in this, but they will be included at some time in the future. With that, we now have our inventory. Let's now another common activatable widget UI main. And grab the inventory, or sorry, we'll grab the canvas. Inventory. So this is if you actually had a main widget and you were going to push this inventory onto the UI. Over here. 0.5, oh, 5, 0.5, 0, 0. And the size is 1062, 740. Okay, and I think that does it. All right, that is our UI. It is set up. Next step is debugging and making any adjustments to catch any mistakes that happened along the way. Let's go into our player. On the begin play, which doesn't seem to exist here. Begin play. We're gonna add our inventory. Kapow. And we'll do create widget Main. Owning is going to be the player controller. We'll add to viewport. Grabbing the player controller, we'll set UI mode, UI only. And set show UI, or sorry, set show mouse cursor. And that'll allow creating the UI. And then we'll also do, is there not a begin play? Where is the begin play? Huh. I think they changed how the template is set up. Because it used to have on begin play where it casts a player, but I guess it's now controller change. Anyways, we're going to grab our inventory component. And actually what I'm going to do is we'll just do load items from here. Load items. The UI should appear. We should have nothing in it because we don't really have anything. But let's see. Okay, so it does appear. Our hover is not working, as you can see. So that's interesting. Oh, that's because we set it to be visible. By clicking on this, the drop works, but it looks like the hover does not. So that is some key takeaways here. So let's make those slight adjustments. We're getting an error as well from our gear slot. So let's make those slight adjustments. Within our UI, we'll open up our bag. First things first, the hover is appearing, and that's because we have it still set to visible. Let's go ahead and set it to collapse. On our graph, we do have where this still works, so perfect. Within our gear slot, we have our hovered event. It is visible, it is focusable, enabled, visible, is focusable, and then we will switch it to the button. We did see where drop gear was working, but the hover wasn't. So the only issue was the hovered state. Let's see if that fixed. Nope, hovered is still not working here. It is working over here though. We are still getting that error, and that's for our gear slot, which is saying that we access none trying to read property. So back into our gear slot, let's do what I was going to do earlier, which I believe may be the issue because I decided to make changes during recording, which is goes against the reason why I built out certain things over the last couple of months. So we're going to go ahead and check, is this valid? If it is valid, use the image, and if it is not, we're going to use our blank image, and we're going to pass that along as the texture. Okay, hit and play here. All right, nothing is still dropping. We don't have to worry about the items because those still go off. And we exit, and it looks like we're still getting access none trying to read property item. When we try to print string, that's the issue. The issue is we're clicking the button, but nothing exists. That's my fault. is valid. We'll do this. Select. If true, use that. If not, use nothing. Which means we probably didn't need this part over here, but I'm going to leave that as is just in case. Now we're still getting the issue with the hovered. I wonder why that is the case. Let's do this, where I'm going to set this to 0. And then on hovered and on unhovered, we're going to open up our bag slot. I'm going to copy this over. I could make styles, but I feel like that's going to take a lot more time. And this is not a perfect UI tutorial. So we have the bag slot. This is more so, here's an inventory system that can work inside of UI. Because I'll also have a video that just kind of excludes this part as well. But that's for a later time. Okay. Going into here. And now that works. Cool. And we get no error. Next, we are going to want to create items and be able to pick them up. That's for our second test. Under objects, we're going to create a brand new object. This is going to be an actor. And we'll just call this, I don't know, we'll call it item paste. This is going to be a very, very simple sphere. Do a 0.5. We'll add a collision. Good enough. For the collision, we'll do custom. We'll have it overlap and then overlap on pawn and physic body. I don't think I use physic body, but it's fine. This is going to be just a demo item, just so that we can pick up items and decide on what is what. Let's make a function, create item. This is how you'll go about creating an item. Data, we'll just call it data. DA item. Grab this over here, expose that on spawn, and we will then do construct object from class. Will be DA item. And now we want to match up. I wonder if it would be nice if you could just like plug that in and then it makes you like search for an equivalent or something. Item type. Amount. Max amount. Plug it all in. All right. And we will then set this to our brand new data. Data, whatever you want to do. So we'll create item. Of course, creating an actual item, you would want to modify whatever you're going to actually have. So like if you're going to have like a data, like where it's going to have like a range of damage or stats and stuff like that, you'd want to do this either before or after constructing it and then modify the information. Next, actor, begin, overlap. And if this, let's do this. Cast to player character. Sorry, I forget. Player? What did I name this player? It's BB character. God damn it. Anyways. Inventory. We're going to do add to gear. Add gear? Is it called add to bag? Oh, it is add to bag. Oh, that's not consistent. And then from here, we'll do branch. We'll do destroy actor if it is in fact true. And then if it is false, as in you picked up the item and did not drop, print. If we tried picking up an item and it fails, then we will grab the data. We will get the name. We'll do append. And pick up space, plug that in. All right, that gives us this very, very simple little sphere. We'll go into here. Object. Bam. And now we don't have like a clear identifier on what is what, so you can't actually see which one is what, but don't worry. And we'll go like so. It ain't perfect, but okay. Now let's change the data for all of them. Armor. Boots. We can't pick up empty. Don't click empty. Helmet. Glove. Main hand. Offhand. Pants. And actually, I'm going to do this. And then potion. Ring. Ring. Highlight all of these. Delete. Grabbing all of these. And we'll do this. So now we have all of the items. And let's switch all of these to potion because they will stack. Let's go into our UI main and let's do a debug one key. We'll branch. We'll check, hey, is visible. Are we currently showing this UI? If we are, set visibility to collapsed. We are not. Set visibility to visible. This is more of a workaround. Layer controller. This is not actually how you set up toggling UIs, by the way. So like, don't do this in a real game. We'll do set UI game. Oh, sorry. Set game only. Set show mouse cursor to false. And then this will be set game and UI. And this will set to true. We're going to go back over here and remove this. We'll set game only. So now we can toggle through by pressing the 1 key. So if I walk through this, we are picking up items. We have our text over there, and we're doing it. We're missing something. Debug, blueprint. Move this over here. Scroll this down. Going into our inventory. Checking our bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it shows 4 is empty. So we have helmet, armor, glove, and glove. And then blank. Oh, okay. So 4, but it's like 5. Okay, so we're missing. What are we missing? Gear panel. We're missing pants. Do we not put down pants? Pants. Okay. So now we have 2 pants on the floor. So let's run through all of this. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so it looks like we're running into an issue where it's not registering our pants as items. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press 2. It saved all of our items. And then I'm gonna load to see what we get. Oh, okay, so we do have pants, but they're in our bag. So they're not being added into our gear. So let's check, see what happened there. Pants, which is 4. So we had 0, 1, 2, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pants exist. Going into our inventory. 4 is pants. Let's go into our data assets. Open up our pants. And there it is. Item, pants. So I'm going to hit the 3 key to delete all my items. I'm going to exit out, go back in. We're now at a blank slate. And then pants appear. Nice. So we're going to go through. Perfect. Everything is loading. We're going to hit that save. We're going to go back in. And let's go ahead and grab all these items. Save again. Do one more time. Okay, so we found one other thing. Our can't pickup is one less than what it should be. So our bag is at 49. But our bag slots is 40. So it means we're calculating 1 over. Going over into our bag functions, the is bag. Bag size, last index, last index. I think we did an unnecessary check here. So now 2 and 3. And then now it's saying can't pick up. All right, saved items, going back in. And we are still maxed. All right, last thing we want to do is I'm going to fix the gear slots because you can't see the frame anymore. So what we want to do is go into the gear slots, and something about the design is off. So let's kind of look at that. So draw as none. We're not using this whatsoever, so let's go ahead and do none. And here, to make it simple. Okay, all of it is set to none. Overlay does not have a size, but we're going to do background, 84, and then image. Let's do 74. Nope, that still didn't work. Let's do this. All right, there we go. Now we can see the frame. So we just missed the padding. But with that, we now have fully functional inventory system. Let's see, double click. Oh, looks like we had an error there. Double click. All right, so it looks like when we are removing an item, we're actually removing 2 items. So let's go into bag slot. Let's remove that. See any change here? Double click. Nope. Okay, it's not that. Let's open up our bag panel. Double click means item dropped. Get index for item. Let's see. When we drop an item, we're sending the index for that specific item. We're then getting the item, saying to drop said item. And passing that along. What if instead we do this? Get item message. Interesting. Oh, that's what we're doing. So what's happening is we didn't account for when we're communicating that when we drop the item, we're not adjusting the index. So let's undo all of this. So let's actually do this instead. So right now with drop items, we're using the item reference and passing that along. But let's go into our inventory and have an input for the index. Oop, we'll do item index. Let's go ahead and remove this. That's going to break a couple things. Do get item index. Or actually, I don't even think we need get item index because we have the item. We could just plug that in here. We're not calling this anywhere, so it's okay to make these adjustments. And then for drop gear, let's do the same thing. Under drop item, let's get rid of that local variable as well. I think I made this change without thinking it through. So this will be item index as well. And then now, if everything is still connected, under drop item for the bag panel, instead of get item, item index, get gear, gear length or size. Gear size gives us the last index. Last index is always +1, so subtract by 1. Plugging that in here. And we're going to grab the item index to add here. I kind of didn't want to do this, where I had to do the math inside of this, but I mean, that's okay. We're going to work with it. And then for here, sorry, not gear slot. We need to get gear panel. Where's our drop function? I thought we had it somewhere. Did we not have a drop function? Oh, you can tell this is, there it is. We could do that. Now, if I double click, interesting. Saying drop, but we're still containing it. All right, it's not working. Drop gear on click. Bag panel. I think it's because we're doing update item. That's for that. For gear panel, update single item, setting items. And it's not that item. Do self, and we'll leave that as blank. Or actually, we could do this instead. And now we'll check, is our bag actually empty? 0 is still a helmet. Okay, I see. So we're removing the index altogether for the bag, which is a problem. So for the bag, when we remove, what we don't want to do is remove the index. We will set array element. To blank. Going into our drop gear, do the same thing. Okay. That is removing them. The issue is the bag is still not passing along the correct index, because I think now we are adding when we don't need to. Yep, there we go. And now we are successfully removing and adding, and all of our things are properly being saved and being removed. All right, so took a bit of debugging because it looks like I did some adjustments on my own. And I thought that would have worked, but it looks like it caused a bit of issues for this along the way. But that would be our inventory system. Everything is set, everything works. There will be iterations later, but there will be a link to the GitHub for the free assets that I did commission this artist to make for the purpose of sharing it with all of you. She does amazing work. There is a link to her as well. I do recommend to check it out. She may take commissions. She is quite busy, but her work is amazing. So, yep. You guys have any questions, comments, or anything along the lines, just reach out, join the Discord, you know, any other self-promo stuff. All right.